Did you know that in the last 15 years, home ownership among Australians under 40 has dropped by nearly 30%? Or that more than 1 in 3 middle-class families now struggles to cover everyday expenses, even with full-time jobs? These aren't just numbers. They're warning signs that the Australian dream is crumbling in real time, and the middle class is at the heart of the collapse. What's happening to the people who used to be the backbone of our country? The ones who worked hard, paid their taxes, followed the rules. Today, they're drowning in debt, priced out of homes, watching their job security vanish, and no one seems to be talking about it. Why is this happening? And more importantly, who's benefiting from their downfall? In this video, we're breaking down the 10 shocking reasons why the Australian middle class is shrinking faster than ever before. Some of these reasons you might expect, but others will absolutely surprise you. Stay with us till the end, because this affects your future, your family, and your financial freedom in ways you haven't imagined yet. Number 1. Wage growth is stagnant. For years, Australians were told that if they worked hard, pursued education, and followed the rules, they'd enjoy upward mobility. But today, that promise is cracking. Despite rising productivity and longer working hours, real wage growth has barely moved. In fact, after inflation, many middle-class Australians are earning less than they did a decade ago. While CEOs and high-income earners enjoy generous bonuses and stock options, the average worker sees only a marginal increase that barely covers the basics, let alone builds wealth. This stagnation is especially painful when viewed against the backdrop of a skyrocketing cost of living. Groceries, fuel, insurance, and utilities now eat into household budgets with ruthless efficiency. Families that once had enough for holidays, savings, or even just a buffer for emergencies now live paycheck to paycheck. The situation is more than just frustrating. It's demoralizing. It chips away at motivation, mental health, and trust in the system. People feel they're running a race where the finish line keeps moving further away, no matter how fast they run. What's particularly alarming is that this trend isn't random. It's structural. The bargaining power of workers has weakened due to the decline of unions, increased job casualization, and the normalization of contract and gig-based roles. Corporations, while enjoying record profits, often pass little of that success to their employees. This is no longer just an economic issue. It's a social crisis. When hard work no longer pays off, the very fabric of the middle class begins to unravel. Number 2. Housing affordability crisis. For generations, owning a home was the cornerstone of middle-class security in Australia. It symbolized stability, independence, and progress. But today, that dream is slipping out of reach for more and more Australians. Housing prices in major cities like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane have exploded over the past 2 decades, far outpacing wage growth. Even in regional areas, prices have soared, pushed higher by investor demand, short-term rentals, and limited supply. For many middle-class families, the only way to get into the market is to take on crushing levels of debt, often tying up half or more of their income just to cover the mortgage. The problem goes beyond just buying. Renters are feeling the squeeze too, with vacancy rates at historic lows and weekly rents reaching record highs. This pushes people further away from their jobs, families, and communities, forcing long commutes and a lower quality of life. The middle class, once able to plan for the future, now finds itself in survival mode, spending more time chasing bills than building wealth. And for young Australians, the dream of home ownership now feels like a fantasy from another era, breeding resentment, anxiety, and a growing sense of injustice. What's most troubling is that housing has been allowed to become more a tool for speculation than shelter. Investors and tax policies like negative gearing have driven up demand, while governments have failed to address supply shortages or implement meaningful reforms. When shelter becomes unaffordable, everything else falls apart. Family life, health, retirement plans, even community connection. The housing crisis is no longer just a personal issue. It's a threat to the stability of the middle class itself. Number 3. Casualization and the rise of the gig economy. Once upon a time, the middle-class job meant security, a steady paycheck, sick leave, superannuation, and maybe even a path to promotion. But today, that security is vanishing fast. Across industries, permanent roles are being replaced by contract, part-time, and gig-based positions, leaving many workers with uncertain hours, no paid leave, and little job protection. This casualization of work is especially common in retail, hospitality, logistics, education, and even professional sectors like media and healthcare. For middle-class Australians, this shift doesn't just mean less stability. It means less bargaining power, fewer benefits, and greater vulnerability to economic shocks. The gig economy, while often celebrated for its flexibility, hides deeper issues. Driving for Uber, delivering food, freelancing online, these jobs may offer independence, but they rarely offer long-term financial growth. Most don't come with super contributions, insurance, or safety nets. They turn workers into micro-entrepreneurs who bear all the risks of running a business without the resources or returns. It's a modern twist on an old problem, shifting responsibility from employers to workers. For the middle class, this means more stress, more hustle, and fewer opportunities to build toward a stable future. What makes this shift so dangerous is that it's invisible until it's too late. A freelancer may appear successful one month, then struggle to cover basic expenses the next. And while some adapt and thrive, many are stuck in a cycle of underemployment and uncertainty. This erosion of stable work chips away at everything the middle class depends on: routine, planning, dignity. Without meaningful labour reforms or protections for gig workers, the casualisation trend will continue to undermine the foundation of Australia's middle-income households. Number 4. Skyrocketing childcare and education costs. Raising a family has always come with expenses, but for today's Australian middle class, childcare and education are swallowing up a larger share of household income than ever before. Parents are faced with a harsh choice: either pay exorbitant fees for quality childcare or reduce working hours, sacrificing income and career growth. In major cities, full-time childcare can cost thousands of dollars a month, often more than a mortgage payment. For dual-income families, this turns what should be a financial advantage into a constant budgeting nightmare. The story doesn't get any easier once children reach school age. Public education in Australia is technically free, but many parents feel compelled to supplement it with private tutoring, extracurricular activities, and in many cases, private or independent schooling. These decisions are driven by a desire to give their children the best possible future. But at what cost? School fees, uniforms, excursions, technology, and contributions all add up, placing immense pressure on already stretched household budgets. For many middle-class families, the choice between a quality education and financial stability is becoming more difficult every year. What makes this trend so troubling is that it deepens inequality. Wealthier families can afford the best schools and early learning opportunities, setting their children up for lifelong advantages. Meanwhile, middle-class families often stretch themselves thin, sacrificing savings, housing upgrades, or even retirement funds to give their kids a fighting chance. Without meaningful subsidies or reform, the rising cost of raising and educating children threatens to lock entire generations out of upward mobility, turning the middle class into a fragile balancing act instead of a stable foundation. Number 5. Tax system favouring the wealthy. At first glance, Australia's tax system may appear progressive, but dig deeper and you'll find a structure that increasingly rewards wealth over work. Middle-class Australians primarily earn income through wages. Every dollar taxed before it even hits their bank account. In contrast, the wealthy often earn through capital gains, property, and business structures that allow them to minimize or defer taxes. Mechanisms like negative gearing, franking credits, and discretionary trusts aren't inherently evil, but they heavily favor those with existing assets, while the middle class shoulders the bulk of tax revenue. This imbalance isn't just about numbers, it's about opportunity and fairness. When property investors can deduct losses while everyday homeowners get no support, when billionaires pay a lower effective tax rate than teachers or nurses, the system signals one thing loud and clear. If you don't already have wealth, you're playing a rigged game. And while tax breaks may be sold as incentives for innovation or growth, the reality is that they often lead to asset bubbles, increased inequality, and declining public services. Middle-class Australians end up paying more while receiving less in return. Over time, this dynamic corrodes trust, not only in the economy, but in democracy itself. When everyday Australians feel like the rules are made by and for the elite, resentment grows, and it should. A healthy middle class depends on a fair and transparent tax system, one that doesn't punish wage earners while letting capital cruise under the radar. Reform isn't just a financial necessity, it's a moral one. If this video made you think, even for a second, we'd love to hear your thoughts below. Seriously, we read every comment. Your story might be the next one we feature. And hey, we put our hearts into every video, so hit that subscribe button. It's free, just one click, and it means the world to us. Love. Number 6. Outsourcing and offshoring. Once viewed as a strategy reserved for manufacturing, outsourcing and offshoring have now become deeply embedded in Australia's white-collar economy. From customer service roles to IT, accounting, and even medical reporting, companies are increasingly shifting jobs overseas to cut costs. While this boosts short-term profits for corporations, it comes at a long-term price: the erosion of stable, well-paying jobs that once formed the backbone of Australia's middle class. These aren't just extra jobs being moved offshore. They're essential roles that used to offer career progression, superannuation, and long-term security. For the middle class, the impact is both visible and invisible. Visibly, entire departments are being closed or reduced, and workers are being made redundant or forced to accept lower-paid hybrid roles that combine tasks once handled by multiple people. Invisibly, even those who remain in their roles feel the constant pressure of global competition. They're told to do more with less, knowing their job could be moved offshore at any moment. This creates an environment of chronic stress, fear, and uncertainty, not exactly the conditions in which families thrive or communities grow strong. What's most heartbreaking is that many Australians feel powerless against this wave. They're told it's the cost of globalization, that it's inevitable. But when high-skilled, educated professionals find themselves underpaid, underappreciated, or unemployed, while executive bonuses soar, something is deeply broken. We're not just outsourcing jobs, we're outsourcing futures. Without national policies that prioritize value-added domestic employment and protect strategic industries, the middle class will continue to shrink, not by accident, but by design. Number 7. Lack of affordable healthcare options. Healthcare in Australia is often praised internationally, but for many in the middle class, the cracks are widening fast. While Medicare provides a foundational safety net, long wait times, understaffed hospitals, and delayed specialist care are becoming the norm. For families who can't afford to wait months for essential treatments, private healthcare seems like the only alternative. But here's the catch. Private health insurance premiums have soared, and out-of-pocket costs continue to rise. For middle-income households already stretched by mortgages, education, and childcare, affording proper healthcare is becoming a luxury rather than a right. The result? A growing segment of Australians is falling through the cracks. They're not poor enough to qualify for certain subsidies, but not wealthy enough to pay for premium care. This squeezed middle often delays necessary treatments, skips dental checkups, or avoids preventative care altogether. Over time, these choices lead to worse outcomes, higher long-term costs, and a greater burden on the system. It's a silent crisis, one that doesn't make headlines but shows up in quieter ways. Missed work, declining mental health, and growing anxiety over what would happen in a medical emergency. And this isn't just about individual hardship, it's about fairness and equity. A strong middle class depends on accessible, timely, and affordable healthcare. When health becomes a gamble, it undermines productivity, stability, and peace of mind. Australia has the means and infrastructure to fix this imbalance. But without bold policy decisions and a reimagining of healthcare funding, we risk becoming a society where good health is dictated not by need, but by your bank balance. Number 8. High household debt levels. Debt has become a way of life for many Australian households, especially those in the middle class. From mortgages and car loans to credit cards and buy now, pay later schemes, debt is often seen as the only way to maintain a decent standard of living. But behind the polished image of suburban comfort lies a growing burden. Australia has one of the highest household debt-to-income ratios in the developed world. For middle-class families, debt is no longer a tool, it's a trap. A mortgage that once symbolized progress now feels like a weight that grows heavier with every interest rate hike. This debt isn't driven by reckless spending. It's often tied to essential expenses: housing, education, transport, healthcare. With stagnant wages and rising costs, many families are simply borrowing to keep up. But this comes with consequences. A sudden medical bill, job loss, or even a modest rate rise can send a family into financial freefall. The stress of managing multiple repayments, juggling bills, and trying to save just in case takes a serious toll, not only financially, but emotionally. It affects relationships, mental health, and even productivity at work. What makes this especially dangerous is that it's normalized. We're sold the narrative that debt is manageable, even empowering. But when an entire class of people relies on credit to stay afloat, it signals a deeper economic failure. True financial freedom should come from earning, saving, and investing, not perpetual borrowing. Without structural changes that ease cost of living pressures and support income growth, household debt will continue to be a silent force eroding the foundation of the middle class. Number 9. Retirement insecurity. For decades, Australians were told that if they worked hard and contributed to their superannuation, they would retire comfortably. But for today's middle class, that promise is starting to unravel. Rising living costs, global market volatility, and insufficient contributions, especially during years of casual or gig work, mean that many will reach retirement with less than what's needed to maintain a decent standard of living. And with people living longer than ever before, super balances that once seemed adequate are quickly proving to be too small to last. What's more troubling is that even homeowners, often seen as financially secure, are finding themselves in the asset-rich, income-poor trap. They may own a home, but lack the cash flow to cover medical bills, home repairs, or even daily essentials. Meanwhile, renting in retirement comes with its own crisis: surging rents, insecure leases, and a shrinking pool of affordable options for older Australians. The idea of a peaceful retirement is being replaced by anxiety, side hustles, and even a return to the workforce for many over 65s. This isn't just a personal issue, it's a systemic one. Insecure retirements place extra pressure on public systems, healthcare, and younger generations who must often step in to support aging parents. And while financial advisors tout the importance of early planning, the truth is, you can't save what you don't earn. Without reforms to superannuation, housing policy, and retirement income support, a whole generation of middle-class Australians risk entering their final decades not with comfort, but with uncertainty, debt, and quiet desperation. Number 10. Policy neglect and political apathy. Perhaps the most frustrating reason for the decline of Australia's middle class is one that cuts deeper than economics: a sense of being ignored. For years, public policy has seemed to tilt either toward the most vulnerable or the ultra-wealthy, leaving middle-income earners stuck in a no-man's land. They earn too much to qualify for support programs, but not enough to truly benefit from tax breaks, asset growth, or private opportunities. What results is a widening gap between those who are heard by policymakers and those who are quietly slipping through the cracks. Middle-class Australians are expected to keep the country running, paying the bulk of the taxes, keeping businesses staffed, raising future generations, and participating in democracy. Yet, when it comes time for real structural reform, their voices are rarely prioritised. Issues like housing affordability, education funding, childcare access, and fair wages are often discussed in election campaigns, but quickly watered down or shelved. Meanwhile, corporate lobbying, political donations, and short-term optics continue to shape decision-making at the top. Trust is eroding, not because people are cynical by nature, but because they've seen broken promises too many times. This political neglect has serious long-term consequences. When a society loses its middle class, it loses its sense of balance, fairness, and shared destiny. A robust middle class isn't just good economics, it's the heart of democracy. Without bold leadership, inclusive policies, and a shift in priorities, Australia risks becoming a nation of extremes. It's not too late to change course, but the time to act is now. The shrinking of Australia's middle class isn't happening overnight, but it's happening fast. From stagnant wages and housing unaffordability to rising debt, outsourced jobs, and retirement insecurity, the pressure is mounting on families who once believed they were doing everything right. These aren't isolated issues. They're part of a broader system that's slowly squeezing the middle out of existence. This isn't just about money. It's about dignity, opportunity, and hope. When hardworking people can no longer afford the basics, plan for the future, or feel heard by their leaders, something is deeply broken. And while the problems are complex, the solutions start with awareness and collective action. If this video helped you see the bigger picture or reflected your own story, don't stay silent. Speak up in the comments, share your experience, and help us start a conversation that truly matters. And if you believe more people need to hear this, please hit that like button and subscribe, because this is just the beginning. Together, we can shine a light on what's happening and push for the change Australia's middle class desperately needs.